U.S. senators struck a deal to lift a three-day government shutdown and try to end a fight between Democrats and Republicans over immigration and border security. By a 266 to 150 vote, the Republican-led House quickly followed the Senate and approved the bill. This includes a 6-year extension of the Children's Health Insurance Program, but not protections for Dreamers immigrants sought by Democrats. The funding measure will now go to President Donald Trump, who has said that he will sign it into law, ending the government shutdown. Legislation to renew federal funding to the government cleared a procedural hurdle in the Senate, allowing government to reopen until February 8th. Senate Democratic leader Chuck Schumer said that he had come to an agreement with Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell to keep the government open for the next few weeks. This after the Republicans promised to let a bill on immigration reach the Senate floor.
Madam President, after 3 days of an unnecessary lapse in funding, a bipartisan majority has brought the Democratic leader's extraordinary filibuster to an end and passed a bipartisan bill to reopen the federal government. As I've said repeatedly over the past week, shutting down the government is an irresponsible way to do business. It does not reflect the seriousness with which I know my colleagues on both sides would like to approach the people's business here in the Senate. All our important work for the American people had to be put on hold while this manufactured crisis was dealt with. We made no substantive progress, not 1 inch, on the serious bipartisan negotiations that will take to solve issues such as immigration and border security, health care, defense spending, and many other matters.
After several discussions, offers, counteroffers, the Republican leader and I have come to an arrangement. We will vote today to reopen the government, to continue negotiating a global agreement, with the commitment that, if an agreement isn't reached by February the 8th, the Senate will immediately proceed to consideration of legislation dealing with DACA. The process will be neutral and fair to all sides.
Meanwhile, the White House has said that President Donald Trump will make a deal on immigration only if he sees it as beneficial for the country.
From the President of the United States that I will read. Quote, I am pleased that Democrats in Congress have come to their senses and are now willing to fund our great military, border patrol, first responders, and insurance for vulnerable children. As I've always said, once the government is funded, my administration will work towards solving the problem of very unfair illegal immigration. We will make a long-term deal on immigration if, and only if, it's good for our country.
The U.S. Vice President welcomed news that U.S. senators have voted to move forward on funding legislation that will reopen federal government. He also blamed Democrats for the shutdown, saying they had failed.
The Schumer shutdown failed. Now that the government is reopening, Congress can get back to work advancing the president's agenda. An agenda that's already created more than 2 million jobs, is setting records on the American stock market, has restored American strength and credibility in the world.
The shutdown began on the first anniversary of Trump's inauguration as president. Tens of thousands of federal workers had begun closing down operations on Monday, the first weekday since the shutdown, but essential services such as security and defense operations continued. Pentagon officials said more than half the Defense Department civilian workers will be granted leave without pay. Research centers and National Zoo remained open on Monday using existing funds.
Yeah, even just walking around today, I noticed there's a bunch of staffers outside the entrance who can't figure out if it's going to be open or not. The Library of Congress has a sign that they're totally shut down and staff don't have access to anything. So, I mean, it does appear that the government is truly not functioning.
It's unnecessary, but I think the Senate should get their act together, particularly the Democrats, and fund the government, and then we can move on to the other issues that are hanging there. There are issues to deal with, but holding everyone hostage is not the way to do it.
During shutdowns, non-essential government employees are furloughed, which means they are placed on temporary unpaid leave. Those deemed essential, including those in public safety and national security, keep working. The last shutdown in October 2013 lasted more than 2 weeks, and more than 800,000 federal employees were furloughed that time.